Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We trust that you are well. I'm doing this recording a little bit later than usual. I've got a glimmer of a smile because I was thinking to myself, strictly speaking, is it afternoon or evening? It's gone 5 o'clock, I believe. But it has just been a very, very long, busy day with tremendous... I've mentioned in other videos that I've made today about a 2-hour plus telephone call that I held, which was very interesting, very educational. I learned a hang of a lot and lots of other stuff. So I'm going to try and keep this Suidlanders week in review for Friday the 17th of February brief, but I don't know if we'll get it right because this has possibly been the week in which we discovered, or in which we could conclude with certainty that the world has gone mad, as if we didn't know it before, but still. I don't think that anybody can now look you in the eye and say, no, this is perfectly normal, it's how it should be. Over my shoulder is a video by a British guy called Dominic Frisby, to whom I have recommended you in the past. On a number of occasions, I've recommended his video on Chinese gold buying. And if you've never watched that video on Chinese gold buying, do so, please. Please do so. I told you previously that he made one, and I recommended it. Then a couple of years later, he made another. And I said, if you're only going to watch the one, watch the first one. And anyway, he now has a video out. Dominic Frisby, easy enough. Frisby with a Y. In which the title is... The Great Decline, Where is All This Going? And you might want to watch that video too. But he's just touching on, I think, something that all of us are experiencing, and which all of us may be said to have really had crystallized in our minds this week, as if we hadn't before. Yes, fair enough, but come on. This week has been too much. So let's get going. We usually work Saturday to Friday inclusive when we do these, following the previous one on a Friday, obviously. I don't have anything interesting from last Saturday. Excuse me. Of course, at that time we were experiencing the great balloon story, but we'll cover that a little bit later. What we did see that was fascinating on Sunday was the tremendous drone video of the great rift in the earth caused by Turkey's earthquake. Since then, we've heard allegations from Turkey and elsewhere that it was done using a HARP instrument, one of these, fancy schmancy, super duper weapons that the USA has been devising over decades. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And I've always been hesitant to buy into every occasion or buy into every instance where people have said, oh, that's HARP, it's the USA, it's a conspiracy, they're setting wildfires. However, there is evidence mounting that may not be the most absurd suggestion. And I think that this story has got a long way to go. As far as the actual earthquake itself is concerned, the death toll has now exceeded 40,000. And I'll put it to you, having followed this thing fairly closely, that it may it may even double or come close to doubling, because so much of the destruction was complete. Not just buildings half fallen down, as they are when struck by a rocket or a missile or what have you, because so many of them were brought right down to the lowest point possible. There are many bodies yet to be brought out of the rubble. We discovered on Monday that Eric Clapton, the famous guitarist, blues guitarist Eric Clapton, has suffered debilitating illness as a result of something that he was persuaded to do in 2021. He's in a great deal of discomfort and pain, and he can't play the guitar, and all sorts of other things. I think that might have come from a few days before, but we covered it a little bit on Monday, as I say. On Monday, we heard that Vodacom had blocked the police spying services. I think that is, we can safely say that is police crime intelligence over a 3 million rand unpaid bill. Vodacom has cut the South African police service off from services such as locating and intercepting calls on its network, City Press reports. According to the report, the cut-off letter was dated the 31st of January and stated that Vodacom plans to hand the account over to a debt collection agency. Sadly, it is a sign of the times, and notwithstanding whatever opinions we may have about those organs of state that have persecuted us, we Suidlanders, I am one of those people who is a great believer in the police, and as long as there are a few good people doing their jobs for the right reason in the right way, I think it's regrettable. I do not rejoice that the police crime intelligence services have been cut off, notwithstanding anything else. We discovered on Monday too that the Ukraine targeting is dependent upon targeting for missiles and cannon, artillery fire, I suppose also for bombs dropped from aeroplanes, smart bombs, that kind of thing, is entirely dependent upon the USA and NATO. And this is a very important thing because it is an allegation that has been made over a long period of time but never acknowledged. And so now the Russians would have the moral high ground if they were to say, well, you are an active participant in this war. You actively aid and abet Ukraine's prosecution, Ukraine's prosecution of the war. We learned on Tuesday that a couple of days before, Lawrence Southern, well known to Suidlanders, Lawrence Southern, the filmmaker, and came out to Suidlanders, made a film called Farmlands that was largely about Suidlanders. Family, mom and dad, were banned from an Airbnb once the Airbnb people discovered that they were the parents of Lawrence Southern. So as Tucker Carlson put it, is this North Korea? That Airbnb bans family members of people for their conservative beliefs. On Tuesday, we saw that Bill Gates was received very poorly over some period of previous day or so in London. People hounded him in his car. They were yelling at him, screaming at him, threatening him, calling for him to be arrested, trying to smack the car. I think they did smack the windows, which is an interesting thing, I'm sure. We heard that there was an emerging South African Defence Force payday crisis. Soldiers may not get their salaries on time. And that was a big thing coming after the SASA payment crisis that turned out to be a storm in a teacup, but it could have gotten a lot worse. Now, for the second time, in this, the SASA one was in late November, December. The second time in a couple of months. The state didn't have money to meet its obligations to people, payments, salaries as it were. And we discovered today that in fact the matter has been resolved. The United States told its citizens on overnight, Tuesday, Wednesday, to leave Russia immediately. It's a very big thing, or promises to turn out to be a very big thing. That's not the kind of thing that you say for no good reason. So we may perhaps expect some drama that would have posed a threat to US citizens, such as Russian secret police rounding up US citizens, such as bombs, missile strikes, who knows? But there must have been something to it. USA Watchdog revealed to us on Wednesday, or certainly we got to it on Wednesday, that one of the leading doctors that has dealt with COVID-19 over the past couple of years has claimed that the number of deaths is far higher than, than perhaps previously thought. And I recommend to you to look it up. USA Watchdog, that's the channel. And then if you're searching, if you're in the channel and you see lots of videos, choices, look for the interview with Dr. Betsy Eads, E-A-D-S. Dr. Betsy Eads on USA Watchdog. It's really worth a look. Again, Wednesday. Actually, Tuesday, Wednesday, overnight. Obviously, our time zone is not the same as everybody else's in the world, and so sometimes it's difficult to know when precisely something happened. The head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, admitted that NATO allies have been training and arming. We already knew this. We covered this last year in about April, but it's the admission that counts. Training and arming Ukraine since 2014. This, ladies and gentlemen, should be remembered whenever you hear or see or read the Western media talking about an unprovoked invasion. One of the biggest events of this week has, well, it didn't take place this week, it took place on the 3rd of February. But I didn't cover it because I thought that it was much ado about nothing. It was the Ohio train derailment. The derailing of a train carrying vinyl chloride, as in polyvinyl chloride. It's not polyvinyl chloride, but vinyl chloride as in the polyvinyl chloride, obviously a constituent element, which is apparently one of the most toxic substances known. I thought that it was just another day. Train gets derailed. Do we cover every train derailment in Pakistan? No. But it has turned out this week, over this past week, that in fact it is an enormous thing. The toxic nature of the substances, how they were handled, apparently deliberately to destroy them by setting them on fire, has caused enormous pollution in the surrounding area. Fish, chickens, rabbits, Other animals, many animals have died. And apparently it is famous for causing the most wicked cancers. So this, after 14 days, has gained a lot of traction since it happened, and it's now a big matter in the USA. But the US government, including their equivalent of the Minister of Transport, is absolutely dead silent about it. But as one of the world's foremost experts said, this was like nuking this town. I'm sure we'll hear some more about it. Again, Wednesday, we seemed to find, for the first time, pretty much proof positive that Ukraine is using chemical and biological weapons. There have been allegations for a long time. Now there are videos, which of course could be staged, they could be false, but they possess what is known as verisimilitude, the ring of truth. They appear to be true, and if they are, it's a very, very serious development, and of course a war crime by the Ukrainians. Telkom announced in the middle of the week that it may retrench 15% of its workforce in its latest round of retrenchments. And I did the maths, and as I said to somebody, if you do the maths over 5 years, it means that it has retrenched exactly 40% of its workforce in over 5 years. 40%. That's a sign of the times. South African tourism went ahead with the Tottenham deal. What more is there to say than what we've already said? It's despicable. It's disgusting. We learned also in the middle of the week that the United States of America is now supplying depleted uranium weapons to Ukraine. Depleted uranium is not the radioactive or the super radioactive uranium that is used in Kuberg, for example. It's a less potent form. I'm not an expert on these things, so I don't have all of the right vocabulary to describe it well to you. But a less potent form, but extremely heavy. Therefore, it carries a lot of momentum. When it strikes something, it has more force to continue on its trajectory, on its path, thereby penetrating, perforating, whatever that thing may be, better. However, it is generally understood that they do have side effects. They have been observed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I believe Syria too, and therefore there are huge objections to the USA doing this, but they're going ahead regardless. The world's first unvaccinated dating service was launched in Hawaii. Say no more. K.W. Miller issued another video in which he told us that our end is nigh, and I, apparently controversially, I'm quite blessed, I'm very fortunate that I get a very high percentage of likes for the videos that I do, abnormally high, which is not to say that many people watch them. You only have to see the figures to know that. I'm talking about domestic videos. Of course, our overseas interviews are enormous. I do a radio show every second Sunday. I'm doing one this Sunday at 4 o'clock on World Broadcasting Network at 4 p.m. that gets higher ratings than CNN's flagship nightly news program. And the Q4 figures have come out recently. That's a fact. But I just want to be clear that my domestic videos, such as this one, don't get many views, but the percentage of likes is abnormally high. And I average about, perhaps I shouldn't say it, but I'm very, 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 very blessed. There's nobody who can say that they are so fortunate. And I did a video on KW Miller's latest video. I'm coming to a point that in which 1 in 10 people dislike the video, which is unheard of. That's like 10 times the number of dislikes. You can do the maths yourself. But I was just making the point, let him insult us. Let him. It's okay. We shouldn't worry so much. Apparently, some people were offended by my message. The USA shot down the balloons. 3 or 4. It turns out now that at least one of the balloons was from the Bottle Cap Balloon Brigade, which is like a father and son club in Illinois, the state of Illinois in the north of the USA, Chicago, Illinois, based on a Disney movie called Up, I believe, where these dads and their boys get together once a week, spend Saturday afternoon making balloons, filling them with helium, and sending them up in the sky. And it seems as if the one that was shot over Lake Huron in Canada, I watched a report on this and they were not certain, but the one that was shot down, the balloon of the 4 or 3, depending upon who you believe, that Joe Biden shot down with an F-22 Raptor, which probably goes for, to get it airborne or to fly it, it's something like $100,000 an hour. Make no mistake. Fired 2 AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles because the first one missed. And they cost $400,000 each or $450,000 each, depending upon who you believe. So they spent $1 million to shoot down a kid's balloon that apparently cost, they spoke to the dad in question, $12 to make. The world is giggling at the USA at the moment, and that's just the truth. Eskom's losses this year, we are told, will now be 20 billion rand and not the 12 billion rand that had been forecast. This is a very interesting thing. In the USA, I'll read this to you. Damning report finds there are 23 public schools in Baltimore, Maryland, although you're supposed to say Maryland. Seriously, if you say Maryland, like I did, or Maryland, they'll correct you. Maryland is how you're supposed to say it. So they say. Where none of the children, 23 public schools, where none of the children understand basic maths. It goes without saying that, well, let me read something to you. People don't believe it when we describe how bad are things in parts of certain cities in the USA, Baltimore, Detroit, Washington, D.C., etc. And they are consistently Democrat cities. Imagine 23 schools where not one pupil understands basic maths. That is the United States of America in the year 2023. It is a society falling apart before its own eyes. A Transnet employee has been selling off wagons, trucks, rail cars. Perhaps we need a minister of railways to look into it. We learned yesterday being Thursday, the 16th of February, that, I beg your pardon, too much talking, too many videos, too many phone calls today, that of the 6 suspects who were involved in a farm murder near Franklin, KwaZulu-Natal, 3 were police sergeants stationed at the Rapid Rail Police Unit in Durban. And they were detained by Kokstad SAPS. It's actually heartbreaking. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I think is roughly the week in review. Is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything that I've overlooked? I think we've covered it all. There's going to be a petrol increase of R1.26 per litre in March. That'll be the first Wednesday of March, as it is, the increases or decreases always come on the first Wednesday of any given month. And diesel prices will rise by up to 38 cents per litre. Oh, last but not least, 2 experts have now responded to Andre de Ruyter's suggestion that by 2024 things should be looking better on the electricity front, by categorically and mathematically proving that they have to get worse before they can get better, and that may take 10 years. And that wherever we are now, whatever degree of difficulty you may say that we're in, whether it's a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10 on your personal scale, it shall have to get worse for certain mathematical reasons, as was explained nicely in a particular article. Oh, I did forget something, man. The Russians have arrived. The Russians arrived in Durban Harbour this afternoon, not very long ago, about 3 hours ago. And I think that you, like I, are on the edge of your seat to see what comes out of this. Is the USA going to impose sanctions upon South Africa? Is the USA going to send spy balloons to watch the exercises out at sea? Is Vladimir Putin going to reveal the missile to us? The first time ever seen in public. The hypersonic missile against which the West apparently has no answer. Who knows what comes next? Over the next, I believe it's 11 days inclusive, the 17th to the 27th inclusive. I suppose some days will be busier and some days less busy. We might not see grand action every day, and of course today's the first day and there wasn't. Probably meetings over the next couple of days, shaking hands, checking the maps, ensuring that the code signals are the same. The South Africans didn't mess them up, got the wrong code book, put the radios on the wrong channel. But hopefully at least 3 or 4 of those days will be action-packed. And we look forward to hearing from the United States ambassador to South Africa on that matter. All right, everybody, have a blessed weekend, a very, very blessed weekend. And we look forward to speaking to you soon. Again, on Sunday, I hope. Okie dokes. Cheerio. Bye-bye.